ranking the scene.
Yo, what the fuck is up, Warped Tour? The state of the scene at SOTS Podcast on all social media. Sam here with Margos.
What's fucking good, Sam?
We're gonna rank the scene today. Surprise.
We do that on this show.
Yeah, we do. We bring 3 new albums to an ever-growing tier list to figure out what the best album in the scene is, and then coincidentally, the worst. As you can see, we got some heaters this week. If you want to submit an album to Ranking the Scene, you can sign up at patreon.com/SOTS podcast. Link in the description of this episode, along with links to our socials, merch, Discord, and all that other good stuff. Now, we're looking at A Day to Remember's Homesick. The story so far is Under Soil and Dirt. And Relient K's crazy fucking name for an album. Insane fucking name for an album. Would love the backstory on the name for that fucking album because it feels so inconsequential that I would love for there to be like a 6-paragraph lore dump on why it's important to Relient K to have named the album Mmhmm. Here are your tiers. At the very top, GOAT, followed by Masterpiece, Certified Hood Classic, That Bitch, Just Okay, Pretty Mid Fucking Awful, and A Crime to Humanity. As you can see, the worst album we've listened to today is Father of All by Green Day. It sits pretty all by its lonesome as a crime to humanity. I stand by it still. I'll stand by it forever. And at the very top, the best album we've listened to, our GOAT to date, is Sempiternal by Bring Me the Horizon, with Disposed by the Plot and You, and Dying Is Your Latest Fashion by Escape the Fate.
Rounding out that tier.
Rounding out that tier. You know, it's probably a good thing that at this point we've listened to 3 GOATs, a fair amount of other good albums right underneath them, and we've only really listened to like a few very bad albums.
Ooh,
you know what I mean?
Accurate.
Like
yes.
for the most part, this has been like a rewarding exercise. We haven't had to sit through a lot of garbage yet. We're gonna start with Homesick by A Day to Remember. Now, first things first. Dan Mumford, most iconic ass artwork in the history of the scene.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, what's crazy is that it felt like him just getting started in this scene around 2009.
Yeah.
And we peaked right away. This is the most iconic Dan Mumford piece attached to any metalcore album in this scene. And there are some good ones. Lost in Existence by Scarlett O'Hara with like the crows on it. I always liked that one.
Yeah.
You got an I Prevail EP in there somewhere that was solid. But like this one to me it's all that. This album's like color scheme aesthetically is perfect for what you end up hearing. Like the purples and the blues and the greens here. Also what would end up being in A Day to Remember ism and having your protagonist with, you know, their back to the camera, like the silhouette of that person.
Right.
Taking on the world, as it were.
In terms of artists in this scene, just real quick, like album art artists, it would probably be like Dan Mumford, Alex Party, who did like a lot of the U stuff. And then his name escapes me, but probably like the Dance Gavin Dance Guy. I mean, definitely has like one of the most recognizable artworks imaginable.
Right. When you do like
the scene. 9
fairly popular a Dance Gavin Dance ones, then yes, like naturally.
Mark's a little flavor text here, not too much. Perhaps their most popular album to date. Multiple hit singles, The Downfall of Us All, It Means a Lot to You, Have Faith in Me, so on and such forth.
That's not a subjective thing. There's probably an objective case to be made that this is their most popular album to this date. With tracks like Have Faith in Me, if it means a lot to you.
I don't know. Like I would also say probably yes, but I don't know. We'd have to figure out like how to measure it. You know what I mean? Like I think most of us would agree, yes, it's probably this, but you'd maybe look at the next couple albums and be like, did they have slightly bigger hits on it? Like did What Separates Me From You have like did 2 songs like pop off a little further than anything on here? I feel like no, but maybe. 20K in its first week is actually quite impressive, but also a sign of the times since Bring Me the Horizon did like 18K this week. So it's a struggle to do as many sales as bands used to.
This one had legs though, because if we're to believe what's in the text there, hit 180,000 more sales within a year.
That's Warped Tour sales, bro.
That is Warped Tour sales.
That's just selling CDs every show.
Those sales were so fucking good. The band looked at Victory Records and said, "We're gonna tear you the fuck down."
That's a good point.
And they destroyed that label.
What's crazy is how important Victory Records was, in spite of how horribly they managed their business and artist relationships, because they really did give us some of the best bands imaginable, just
some
over
of my
and over
favorite
and over
bands
again,
ever,
right?
yeah.
Just like Silverstein and Aiden and fucking Hawthorne Height, like they were cooking like for
in
so
that time,
long.
yeah.
But it's a shame that it just like ended so poorly with every single band that they ever managed. All right, so obviously we open with one of the greatest songs in the history of metalcore. Really not up for debate.
Is this the A Day to Remember song to this date?
For sure, I think so. I mean, I feel like it's this or it's like Have Faith in Me, but it feels like the two sides of A Day to Remember. It's like whichever one you prefer, you still get the best of both worlds on this album.
I mean, it does show like one of their goofiest sides, and I think that's a very important aspect of this band.
Yeah,
like goofiness and the whole reason this song went viral at the time it did and still does is like that da 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 da, like that whole thing.
Right. We also get like the clear throat on "I'm Made of Wax, Larry. What Are You Made of?" which I feel like plays to that same.
Clear throat was iconic.
Yeah. So. The singles I think here are like rock solid.
They're
like,
knockouts. They're all knockouts.
Yeah, and they're spread out in this album, like ending with "If It Means a Lot to You." Like really spreading them out here, I think is incredibly beneficial for the record because you always have like you're always on the precipice of hearing one of the best A Day to Remember songs you've ever heard in your life. But there's a lot of good also mixed in there. I mean, Mr. Highway's Thinking About the End. Disrespect Your Surroundings is like one of the most iconic mosh calls in the history of the fucking game.
I mean, you're skipping over what is quietly my favorite track on this entire album, which is New Jersey Legion Ice-T.
Really?
NJ Legion Ice-T.
Interesting.
Just got like one of the best A Day to Remember choruses for me. Just a really solid song overall. And it's like a little taste of everything. That one already has always stuck out to me personally.
I think in terms of underrated, Homesick, I don't think that I ever appreciated that track nearly as much, as I should have and as I did sort of revisiting this record. I think overall, truthfully, there's not a lot of misses here. It's pretty consistent with insane peaks, a very high floor. I always remembered being slightly more down on this record when I initially heard it than I was revisiting it. Like, I think it's held up remarkably well, maybe partially too because it plays to my fondness of how much I used to love this band before, some of the style shifts they've had or, issues they've had with member. This is a huge nostalgia play for me. But
I'll agree that
being
it was
better than I remembered, I think was like surprising.
Yeah, I'll agree. It was a little surprising in that sense. Revisited this one thinking like, oh, you know what? Liked the singles, didn't think there was much else going on with this album outside of like the couple of tracks I knew I loved beforehand, but then walked away thinking like, oh damn, all of this is pretty solid for sure.
The way that they're able to just like bounce in and around like the spectrum of like pop punk and metalcore and like have it all flow so seamlessly and not have me feel like not have me listening to a song yearning to hear another side of this band, but like really feeling rewarded by either like side of this band.
Understanding and appreciating that you were experiencing the best of both worlds.
They really captured a magic here that I think they maintained relatively for a long time, but have in the last few years certainly struggled to like recapture. So what do you think about Homesick by A Day to Remember? Look at this list and
I think
Give me a vibe.
I think the conversation starts at that bitch. I think this is way better than just okay. And I think that's where that bitch is. So then it's a matter of sort of how far it can climb from there.
I think it cleans everyone on that list for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me personally,
like
definitely. Like, I think the closest point of comparison really would be this Good Charlotte and Bad Omens records, but I think it's better than both of them.
So are you saying then that competition starts getting a little stiff towards the back half of Certified Hood Classic?
Right, so let's start with, would it be the top of that bitch, or is it a Certified Hood Classic? Marcos, I look at this album, and Certified Hood Classic feels right.
It does. It really does.
It really, truly is a perfect definition for what this album is. I like it more than that Under Oath record, I think.
Huh.
I don't know.
Okay, well,
I don't think it jumps too high here. Let me know what you think.
Well, I was going to say, I think we work our way from the top down. Better or worse than AFI?
Worse.
Okay. Bullet?
Worse.
Neck Deep?
Worse.
I think the conversation gets interesting around Micah.
Yeah, this feels like a better album than Micah, Billy, and Under Oath, honestly.
I'm right there.
This is perfect then. This was nice and easy for us.
This one feels pretty simple to me. I don't hate it above Neck Deep either, truthfully.
It being in the middle, just like, again, it's quintessential Certified Hood Classic.
Yeah.
All right, so now that we are done with that, we can jump into Under Soil and Dirt by The Story So Far. This drops in 2011, Marcos. Under Soil and Dirt is The Story So Far's debut studio album, as well as their debut with Pure Noise Records, which they've stayed on since, by the way. That's
longest
13
marriage
years.
Going in this scene.
2 singles, Rome and Quicksand, which pretty much kicked this album off. The album scored a spot on Rock Sound's 51 most essential pop punk albums of all time. What an absurd number.
I read that as 51 most existential pop punk albums of all time for a second.
I love the idea of existential pop punk albums. I like this. Parker Cannon told LA Music Blog, the name for the record came from the things I wrote about on that record, which were obviously a girl growing up and moving away from home and leaving my friends. I guess the name came from wanting to put everything, all those feelings away and put them under soil and dirt. It was a weird title for it. We went through a couple titles and I can't remember, but that one stuck.
I think it's important to like add a little bit more punctuation there. Obviously a girl, also growing up.
Can I start here?
Moving away from home and leaving my friends. You made it sound like it was all about a girl who did those things.
No.
You threw me for a loop?
I read bad. Let me start here. If a girl broke up with Parker Cannon every 2 years, this band would have the best discography in the history of music. Because what the end of that relationship has done for the creative output of this record is miraculous, honestly. I know, like, we always talk about this idea that, like, hey, we want our artists to be happy, even though we all kind of agree that when they're miserable, they produce incredible art. Well, I'm going to be honest. Right. I never want a happy day in Parker Cannon's life, ever. I want Parker this fuck to be miserable for all time. It just produces.
Yeah, like, listen.
Do you see that last bit, by the way, real quick?
In an interview with Punk News?
Didn't record one vocal while sober.
Fuck.
Interesting tidbit.
Bro went through heartbreak to hell and back to record this one. And it shows, man, there's some misogynistic shit in here.
Man,
in a way that, like, bro, you used to think that metalcore misogyny hit? Nah.
Right.
Pop punk misogyny was apparently where it was at in the music scene.
Punk misogyny was just a little more clever. Like, metalcore misogyny is like, girl bad, hate her. But like punk misogyny is like, you don't know how unproductive it is to keep falling in and out of love with you, and like,
there's a lot. All right,
there's like the thigh line. There's like the thigh line. There's the thigh line.
I hope your father knows you went to college to get more stupider. It's like, okay. It's interesting.
There's a range with Parker Cannon, because there are other lines on here that I think are quite brilliant, like High Regard, where he goes, you're not as smart as you look. I think for me is just one of the most brilliant little, like, turn of phrases I've ever heard.
I love the chorus of Quicksand is so good. This quicksand keeps pulling me underneath her. Mm-hmm. Just a lot of fun stuff like
Sharp
that going
writer,
on.
incredibly sharp writer. Obviously heartbroken, and like some of these lyrics are direct and cruel.
This album really...
But like, do pop punk boys not get to be heartbroken?
Listening to this,
Yeah.
one band I don't know if it's because we recently listened to an album of theirs. One band kept coming to the front of mind. Senses Fail.
Interesting.
I don't know if it's like slightly similar. Songwriters, singers, maybe.
You know who came to mind for me? We talked a bit about The Peace and the Panic being like the pop punk album.
I hear
that,
some
like,
Benny. Some
did
Benny
it.
Bar.
Well, it's specifically like, I think had I heard this album first, this might have been the one for me. Is how like how quintessential it feels, how directly it connected with how
there's a timeline where we got
is.
into pop punk 6 years earlier.
You cut it open and pop punk just like explodes from like the blood veins. Like it's insane. Like
and it's nonstop sound. I mean, you said
it's
it.
non-fucking stop.
We kick off with 2 singles pretty much. Like States and Minds is an interesting song where it's like essentially 45 seconds of instrumental. You repeat a line twice and then it goes right into Rome. So you get 2 fucking knockout singles right at the top. And those songs really are, at the very least, excellent single choices, if not the best songs on this album.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't stop from there. High Regard, Daughters, Mount Diablo is
Mount
really
Diablo.
solid.
Mount fucking Diablo. I'm going to click in here real quick.
Is that the Thighs line?
Mount? No. I don't think so. Is it? You're a product of environment and middle-class wealth, and sleeping that much won't improve your health. Your interest in me is like dust on the shelf. Easy to brush off despite your mood. Call me a liar, I'll show you a fake. Call me a liar, I'll show you a fake. Punch me in my throat, Marcos. My old man told me to think on my own, and I'm sure that's your biggest mistake. Don't punch my mic. Don't punch my mic. I just I was eating just eating up every single line on this song. I could not get enough of it. Absolutely
It
incredible.
felt that way with the whole album. Surprisingly, too. Like, I went into this one. You and I had never heard it. Again, like, I really want to establish that. And that's sort of, again, the beauty behind this show is we're listening to a bunch of albums we've never heard of most of the time. And yeah, I walked away really, really impressed. I was extremely happy with this one.
Yeah, just absolute fucking work of art. Incredible work. The only time that I kind of laughed is when I got to Closure, and I was like, Closure my ass. Like, I just heard the last fucking 10 songs. You're not over shit, bro. Closure. Fuck off.
Right.
Man, I think this is a pinnacle. I think this is peak pop punk. I think this one...
Oh, hold on then. Hold your horses. Because I remember this show telling everybody that The Peace and the Panic was pinnacle pop punk.
I know, but you heard what I said earlier. I hadn't heard this.
You hadn't heard this.
I hadn't heard this.
Okay.
All right. We're not even discussing just okay. It's better than that. So we can go ahead and start at that bitch again.
It sounds like we're not discussing that bitch and that it's already a certified hood classic.
Well, let me take a peek.
And it does have that reputation from what I've been able to gather online.
Yeah. Do I take this?
I think the conversation starts, do you take this over Homesick?
I don't know. Do I want to get that far ahead of
peak.
myself? Let me ask you, like, you take this over like the 1,000 Below album? Tricky, right? I feel like it's a little tricky.
So that bitch is a category where I think you've got some not deep flaws, but it's an album that is flawed enough to prevent it from being a perfect record. Right?
And we're saying no flaws on this then.
I don't know if I'm saying that, but I think that is what you have established.
I'm
trying to figure out if I agree.
I agree. You're talking me into it. You're talking me into it.
So I think I actually do take this over everything in that bitch.
Okay.
It's not clearing hood classic though.
It's not. I don't know if
it's not a masterpiece.
All right, let's look at...
I think the back
Did you
half
like
of this
better than
album-
A Day to Remember, honest to God? Did you or did you not like this better than A Day to Remember?
It's a pretty good album. I think I did. I think I did like this a little bit more.
So now we're looking at the top of pop punk, like historically our favorite pop punk album of all time. And are we saying this is better?
It's got some moments.
That's tough for me. That's tough for me.
I don't take it over Peace and Panic.
I don't either. I think it's right under. I feel like it would be disrespectful for me on a couple of listens to come in here and say it's better than the pop punk album that like made me fall in love with the genre.
This is the definitive list, though. No bias.
I can't do that to the Peace and the Panic. I simply cannot. I can't. It wouldn't feel right to me.
Okay. I like it where it is.
Yeah, I'd like it too. Crazy to have 2 albums drop right at the top of Certified Hood Classic. Solid week, Marcus. Let's see how it ends. Mmhmm. By Relient K, which came out on November 2nd, 2004. 20,000 million fucking years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They doing a 20-year for this? They playing this at When We Were Young? Is this one of them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is? Mm-hmm. Okay. You're just gonna... I understand now.
All right. Tired of the bit that fast, huh?
I caught on. This album is longer than any album needs to be ever. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it.
55-minute album.
There's no pop punk album that needs to be this long.
It's a bit long. I sense some negativity from you.
It's not negativity.
I'm going to come right out and say that I really enjoyed this album, not knowing what it would be heading into it, and having spent 0 time with Relient K prior.
I had a good time, but...
Have you heard this before?
Yeah, I did, but it didn't stick. Like, going back...
So it felt like the first time again?
It did. Like, obviously, I know Be My Escape. Once Who I Am Hates Who I've Been came on, I was like, oh, yeah, no, I definitely heard that shit, too. This was, I had a friend in high school who only listened to Christian bands, and most of them I was not a fan of, but she had the Relient K CD, so that one got played early and often. This is acceptable to me.
I quickly gathered by listening to this that this was in fact a Christian band.
There's no Parker Cannon lyrics in here.
No.
We are respectful of women and everyone else.
It's void of disrespect, which
I mean, there's my girl's ex-boyfriend, which is a little funny, but so I had an interesting thought while listening to this. I know we had like this big pop punk resurgence, but I feel like it didn't really capture this style of pop punk of like something corporate, boys like girls, sugar cult. Like it feels like we kind of stopped at like the Blink punk. Good Charlotte, and we didn't get this far. Like this nostalgia wave didn't come.
Well, I think that begs the question then, did this need a revival?
I think this would play actually pretty well in modern like days. I think you could put together a little pop punk, pop rock band doing this style of music and it would work. Did it work on this album? Yes and no. I think this being 14 tracks, 55 minutes works very much against it. Yes. There's just too much here.
Realistically, there's like 9 fucking bangers on this. And then it's got 5 other songs.
I So Hate Consequences is really solid. I really liked This Week, The Trend.
Well, I'm most curious how you felt about The Closer, which is like a 6-minute track.
Didn't love The Closer, to be honest with you.
By the time I wanted to love
I also
The Closer.
Not a huge fan of Life After Death and Taxes failure too. So
that's why I bring it up, because by the time we get to specifically those 2 tracks, I'm just so ready for this album to be over.
Yeah, that's a big part of the problem.
It's almost like subtracting points the longer it goes, in the sense that like at that point I'm satisfied.
This band has so many good songs on here that the part of the problem is you can really look at this and be like, I think if we cut 4 tracks, we would have had a real solid record. I'm running through My Girl's Ex-Boyfriend, which is kind of like fun B material. Like I'd keep it. More Than Useless is slightly better than average. I like what they do with Witch to Bury, Us or the Hatchet.
I like that track. And
then the transition into Let It All Out. I think that's really seamless and clean. But man, there's like a Maintain Consciousness, Life and Death, When I Go Down. Really didn't like the opener either. The one I'm waiting for. There's just and High as 75 I could like take or leave, but like there's just a little too much fat where it's like, One of those songs on here, I probably would have barely noticed. 5 of them has got me like you've pushed like my nerves a little bit.
So
you'd never heard this in your fucking life,
No.
right? Okay. Be
No.
My Escape. Had you heard that?
this wasn't even like the Relient K album artwork I was most familiar with. I think it's the album that came directly after this one
Interesting.
that I in my mind directly relate.
I feel
to
like I don't
Relient
remember a
K.
fucking thing about this band after
Post
this
this?
album. Yeah.
But then you have to remember again, my frame of reference is like having never heard them and only ever having seen like artwork. And then honestly, the name I never liked, which is one of the biggest things that kept me away from.
What the
listening
fuck
to
is
them.
the deal with the name? I don't get it.
What are you relying on?
It
letter?
makes no fucking sense. Be My Escape is huge, right?
I'm not going to take away that like the good songs on here are fucking outstanding.
That Be My Escape and Who I Am Hates Who I've Been, like they were cooking.
They're fucking solid. I'm
Like
not
the
gonna
church
lie.
barbecue was going crazy.
You could have converted me if you play those 4 songs in a row.
Ultimately, that might have been part of what they were trying to do. It's always hard to say, Marcus. All right, so let's bounce back into this list. Let's take a look at this. It's flawed. So, like, we're not going GOAT. We're not going masterpiece. We're not going certified hood classic. I'm sorry. I think it might struggle a little bit to get into that bitch. Thoughts?
Let's look at the back half of that bitch. Do you take this over any of like those last 3? Dead Throne, No Hope, Finer Things? Is that the name of that state?
If I'm
Champs
talking
album?
listening to an album in its entirety, your answer is no. And I'm looking at the top of Just Okay, and I'm taking a lot of those albums first as well.
Danger Kids we just listened to most recently. Same with that Beartooth album.
And those clear this.
are better. I take
Miss May I clears this. After Laughter, Emarosa clears this.
I think the discussion starts around Casey and Wonder Years. I may have had a better time with this than I did that Wonder Years album.
I think I did too. And it's hard to say if you have a better time with this album than Casey because you're not meant to have a good time with
Right.
Casey. You're meant to be miserable.
There's probably something more to that Casey album where if I had spent another 20 listens with it, that's like a GOAT old time, but no.
So,
It's
have
better
we
than-
walked ourselves into a this?
No, I think I take Casey over this.
You take Casey
I think I'm more
over
likely to
this.
listen to Casey than Relient K again.
That's fair, but I had
Like
a lot
these
more fun
albums.
with this than I would with the Wonder Years.
Well, sure.
The Wonder Years is like an album I respect but don't quite love.
Yeah, I don't know. That album suffers from having really iconic artwork that means I should have appreciated it more.
Would you
and
say
so
this
as a result, like, I don't know.
Relient K artwork iconic to you?
No, it's not.
Oh no, you said that specifically.
Yeah.
It
I
didn't
don't
matter
even
to
think
you
I've ever seen this
whatsoever.
art.
You hated it.
To me, it's actually a lesser version of what I can gather the story so far are doing with their artwork. Even
It
though
feels
that's
like
hard
this is the
to-
continuation of it. Like that
Right.
album turns into this one.
Even though it came out like 7 years after or beforehand.
Okay, this was a fun one. Well, we listened to some pretty good albums.
I'm really liking how this is starting to shake out. Sam, one thing I'll add, just the way that we've got things set up here, one more ad to Just Okay, and it's gotta knock
I
everything
know
down.
we're gonna start our first second row.
That's
I can't
gonna be a
wait.
big decision.
It's not going to happen next week, though. We'll be off, but we'll be back the week after. Once again, if you want to submit an album, patreon.com/SOTS podcast. And you can follow us at SOTS podcast on all social media. If you enjoy the show, leave a thumbs up, comment below if you agree with our decisions and or disagree, and love you. Bye.
The fucking